The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Victoria Jones from Satoshi's Page.
Hello, evening everybody.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue 1, the battle between Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Knots is getting ugly. The Core versus Knots debate is sweeping the Bitcoin community as node operators weigh Core stability against Knots anti-spam features. The Knots party is up to 17% in votes on nodes. What is it all about? Op return. Op return allows you to store data in the Bitcoin blockchain. Previously, it was limited. Recently, Core decided that they would remove the limit on data. The effective limit will be a 4 megabyte block size. This debate, launched by Peter Todd and Jameson Lopp, among other Bitcoin Core developers, says that they say that it's less censorship to allow people to purchase the blocks. Other people on the Knot side say that there should be censorship and somehow a way to stop data from being entered into the Bitcoin blockchain, which seems confusing as you can't stop anyone from sending the money anywhere. Victoria Jones, what do you think about Bitcoin Core versus Bitcoin Knots?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't really been aware of this debate until very recently, and so I've only just started looking into it, and it does seem quite concerning, really. Obviously, there's already been the situation with ordinals on Bitcoin, which is fair enough. That's part of Bitcoin's original design, but to deliberately change the size of the amount of data that can be stored on the blockchain does seem incredibly irresponsible. To go from 83 bits to 4 megabytes is huge. And I understand that small amounts of text for various reasons might be useful, especially when it comes to managing the code, but 4 megabytes seems extremely large, and there seems to be a lot of concern about the fact that this could allow images and much bigger data storage on the blockchain, which is quite concerning, really, because of course the blockchain is immutable. Once it's there forever. And who's to say that something couldn't be placed on there that was libelous or slanderous, for example, and can never be removed? I mean, there are strong, right to be forgotten laws in Europe, for example, and if you allow for certain things to be added to the blockchain that can never be removed, you create all sorts of implications. I think it's also concerning because a lot of people have invested in Bitcoin because they understand it to be a certain thing, and it's like having purchased an extremely high spec car, for example, and then the car manufacturers coming along and saying, well, actually we've decided to change these parameters and there's nothing you can do about it. And so understandably, in those circumstances, some people are going to kind of say, well, that's not what I signed up for, so I'm not interested anymore. Bitcoin has a very strong narrative, and part of that narrative is about privacy. It's a new kind of money that's a viable alternative to what we've had up until now, which has led to a lot of corruption, a lot of imbalance, a lot of poverty because of the way in which the system is structured. And Bitcoin, as it exists, has a huge opportunity to change all of that. And all of a sudden, you've got this unilateral decision to make this change to how the blockchain works without a lot of debate. It's not, the idea was only presented in April, has only been debated for a few months, and all of a sudden it's going to be implemented in October. And so, there are a lot of people who are understandably upset about this, and I completely understand why. I know that the Knots community are trying to introduce a new type of software which helps to introduce more censorship again. But the thing is, if the underlying blockchain is able to transmit, nefarious images, for example, that weakens the reputation of the entire blockchain, regardless of what someone like Knots might be able to do. And so, yeah, I think this is a really concerning change. And yeah, like I said, I totally understand why people are upset about it. I'm quite concerned about it too.
I really don't get it. What's worse, hosting CP or sending money to CP? It seems like Bitcoin already sends money to anyone you want in the world, whether they support CP or terrorism or anything else that we as a society might reject, but they might accept. That's the whole point of uncensorable transactions, the nodes that send everyone's money where it needs to go, no matter what. Now it seems like they're just expanding the idea to send everyone's data as well, which will obviously piss off fundamentalists, people that don't like certain images, pictures of certain prophets. We already know that the Quran, the Bible, presumably, Hitler's manifesto, whatever else, is all in the blockchain as text, right? You've been able to do this with text. The big change is that I guess at 4 megabytes, you'd be able to pay an incredible amount of money for an image. It seems like it's more of another way of leveraging the blockchain, selling the data. Remember, if they pay, it's not spam. You just need to raise the prices until you get a higher quality or a higher symbol or a signal, so that if you're getting bad data at first, the price is raised, eventually the spammers can't afford the prices and it goes away. As far as the database containing bad data, it seems like we're already pirates here, right? We have our pirate hats on, we're sending transactions to anybody. They were worried that Al-Qaeda was going to use it, Hamas, anyone else, drug traffickers, all of these things. We found, of course, at the current level of Bitcoin development, it's very transparent and probably a bad use for those things, which means maybe we should be working on fungibility instead of this debate. But Victoria, what do you think? What about the idea that Bitcoin can already send money, which is, support to any cause, while hosting a data file is in its own way support? It seems like actual material, actual potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars for your cause, whether it's CP or terrorism or production of CP or whatever. It seems like we already send them the money. What's the difference?
But you're completely changing the character of what someone's already bought. I'll go back to my analogy of a car. It's like saying that, well, I bought a Tesla because it had this, this, and this feature. And then the manufacturer comes along and says, well, we're not doing it like that anymore. We're doing it in a completely different way. Data and, yeah, money. Obviously, you want it as a very neutral tool, but images and data is a different thing. The money transmission effects of Bitcoin are set up in a very specific way in order to mimic economic properties. You create a very different beast if you're including things like written text and nefarious images. It is a different thing. Yes, okay, there are people who might use that money for those sorts of things at the moment, but I would argue that some of those things exist partly because our monetary system is so corrupt, and so people will adopt those sorts of activities out of desperation, because they exist in a system that's unfair. I think a lot of crime exists for that kind of reason, and so the arguments are quite complex. You've created a set of software rules that are essentially neutral, but data and language aren't neutral. They can be used for very bad things, and libel and slander, for example, that can't be changed. You can come along and say sorry, but once it's out there and added to the blockchain, it's always going to be there for someone to pick up on. And I think it makes Bitcoin a very different thing from what it was originally intended.
It still seems to me that we're already a pirate network. We already have all the bad text in the world. It's already been inserted by the old things. With a new system, they think it's going to create more efficient NFTs. It might get people to stop using ordinals, which they think was harmful to the network. So maybe this is a new way of adapting to new kinds of data that people want to store on the Bitcoin blockchain. Additionally, they'll have to pay. I can only assume that the price will go up if lots of people are using it. And I just have to go back to, like, we're already wearing the pirate hat. We're already delivering potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars to terrorists or to Epstein's or to whatever it is. We don't know. That's kind of the whole point of Bitcoin. If you take out the moral argument, is there a technical argument about why this is bad? I mean, the blocks are still 4 MB. The people are still paying them. There might even be a way where we look at this and we say, what about the mining problem in 2120 when there stops being a mining reward? What if the miners are now paid to host this data? And what if the data turns out to be mainly timestamps and boring data and less of this exciting, immoral data that we're suddenly morally against?
Well, that's a speculative problem. We haven't reached that point yet. By the time it gets to the stage where Bitcoin isn't being produced via mining, uh, it will be a very different place. We would assume that Bitcoin is more adopted by then, and it would be reasonable for the miners to be generating revenue through some sort of fees. So to try and make that argument based on something that hasn't happened yet, I think is a problem. Um, Also, as someone who runs a node myself, I was working with a software developer the other day to look at updating it, and already the 1 TB drive that I have to run it is already almost full, and 1 TB was meant to be something that lasted for years. So ordinals are already causing a problem in terms of too much data. And of course, every time you update your hard drive, you're looking at another 100 quid, and then you've got to, once you reinstall it, you then got to wait for the whole blockchain to propagate again. So having large amounts of data on the blockchain makes it very, very tricky to use. And of course, this was the essence of the argument when it came to the block size wars in 2017. One of the main reasons for keeping the data low is because you don't want to make it prohibitive for individual node users to be able to use the nodes. That's one of the main reasons in which you keep it decentralized. And there may well be a number of financial pundits who say, well, it's only useful as digital gold. That's not true. That's not what it was originally intended for. And actually, a form of digital gold is not going to completely change, is not going to fundamentally change the system as we have it already, because that it will just be adopted into the existing financial system, and it will be financialized like actual gold is right now. The whole point of Bitcoin, by having it decentralized, is you have a legitimate way of disrupting that system. If you spoil the ways in which it can be decentralized by making it too expensive or too difficult for individuals to run a node, then you are fundamentally tampering with what Bitcoin was meant to be. So, I think there are a number of reasons why, this change is a problem. And also the way in which it's been implemented, I think, is a problem. The fact they only found out about it yesterday and it's changing next month. I mean, I'm someone who's very familiar with what happens in Bitcoin, and, it's only now that it's really kind of coming out. And so there hasn't really been a proper debate about it. And, Bitcoin was set up in such a way that it shouldn't be possible to do that. It should be, there should be chances to have ongoing debates about these things, especially when it's such a fundamental change. Bitcoin is incredibly valuable now. It's the backbone of the cryptocurrency industry. If you break it, you end up breaking a whole industry that a whole number of businesses are relying on now. So I think it's very responsible, actually. I do understand why people are upset about it.
It just seems like by reading Peter Todd's arguments here from this article, it says the op return war intensifies. It seems what they're mainly talking about is the trouble with people creating NFTs, whether they're ordinals or I forget the other kind, and trying to cram them into the Bitcoin blockchain. This would allow people to just directly create them. They could insert the code into the blockchain. It seems like, other than the moral argument, I'm not sure what else there is to this. I mean, as far as hard drive space, you can buy a flash card for like $100 that's a terabyte now. So I'm sure they have 2, 4, and 6 TB. I mean, we continue to go up with technology. So I think that's going to work out as far as the nodes and the people running them.
But we're
I
only 10
also,
years in. If you want something that's going to last 100 years, that's not necessarily not necessarily an argument. I mean, the thing is, if 1 TB is not enough at the moment, £100 isn't enough. You now need 2 terabytes or even 4 terabytes. And of course, if you're going to massively expand the amount of data, I mean, the increase from 83 bits to 4 megabytes is huge. Um, so yeah, I do think it's a problem. And I do think, Bit using Bitcoin to transmit language and expanding its reach into something that it was never intended for, I think that is a problem, and I think it will damage Bitcoin's reputation, which could be very dangerous at this point in time. Mm.
Yeah, but the text is already there. It seems it's mainly the switch to image, which is the potential problem. And additionally, if we just put aside the entire moral argument that I don't think is very valid because we send money to anybody, that's our thing. And money is more important than just support. Money actually allows you to do things. If you're holding someone hostage, you get some more money, you can hold them hostage longer. Like you're
Yeah,
extending
but
potential
yeah,
bad.
yeah, but the thing is, governments can't really interfere with that, and it's much harder to shut it down just because it's a form of money, because it makes it a very neutral tool. If you get to a stage where you've got illicit images transmitted on the blockchain, you're creating a situation where they can legitimately prosecute anyone who runs a node because you're transmitting data. That falls within, existing laws. So the moment you do that, they could legitimately arrest anyone who's running a Bitcoin node for transmitting that kind of property. So, transmitting money is one thing. Creating a new form of money was technically illegal when Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin. Um, and they got around that. But, transmitting images is not just about it being illegal, but I think it's also something that people find fundamentally distasteful. I mean, we've already got a reputational issue by the fact that, it can be used as money for that kind of nefarious thing. But the thing is, money itself isn't a moral argument. Transmitting wrong images and wrong data is a moral argument. And I think governments would legitimately have a problem with that. And I think anyone who's transmitting Bitcoin, when it is carrying those sorts of images, is potentially in trouble. I do think it could be a problem.
It just seems like the text is already there. Also, if you wanted to take an image, I think you can convert it into text, insert it into the blockchain, and say it was there anyway. I think they were going to do this anyway. I think they were going to make node running illegal. I think they're going to make Bitcoin illegal. I think we're in a glorious time where Wall Street's celebrating Bitcoin because they don't know what it is. They don't know the potential threat that it is to everything that they own. And so therefore they're not able to do anything about it except to say, "Ooh, it looks really neat now," all of a sudden. And I also putting on all these sides, I don't think that the Knots crew is the one we want running Bitcoin. I mean, we might disagree with Core on how they've rolled this out or they didn't talk to enough people, but it does seem like a large scale open source project with the most developers looking for the most bugs is going to be the most successful rather than a couple of guys, some religious extremists and so forth. What do you think about
Well,
that,
I never said that Knots was a viable alternative. I mean, I know very little about them. I mean, obviously, it seems to be the only alternative solution at the moment. So I can understand why people are flocking to them as a form of protest. Um, and I think it's about the fact that the protest is valid and those voices aren't being listened to and it's not being discussed properly. And to make that kind of change without a full debate, I think is irresponsible. Um, so, you might not think that it's a moral argument, but I don't think everyone would agree with that.
And of course, the source of this change is Peter Todd, friend of the show, alleged Satoshi Nakamoto via HBO. And I still think the only person who could have written that comment where it says, if you don't understand it, I don't have time to explain it to you. In the same way, I think he's kind of doing that here with knots. They're calling it an arbitrary limit. They're saying there's no reason not to have more data in the block size. What do you think, Victoria? Are they just engineers that just can't see the potential technical problems of this? Or are they like, secretly working to undermine Bitcoin? Blah, 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 blah.
Well, it's interesting actually because when I first entered the Bitcoin space, my background is as a dentist. So, I've worked with people on the ground, face to face. I've run my own business. Um, I know what it's like to try and, operate in the world. And it was through running a business that I started to understand what the problems were with the financial system. And one of the things that struck me, particularly when I started going to Bitcoin conferences, was that there were software developers who really didn't seem to understand how the monetary system worked. And there were people in the monetary system who really didn't seem to understand how software system worked. And that's one of the things that prompted me to actually write my book, because I felt that there was a gap in the market for someone to kind of bring those two things together. And this is part of the problem of the way our society exists these days. It's very specialized. It's very, there aren't many people who can kind of bring both sides of the argument together. And so um, I wouldn't necessarily say that the software developer, core is doing this deliberately. I just think they're so focused on what the software needs that they're just completely out of touch with what they're doing in terms of, reputation management. I mean, I have heard, Peter Todd comment on the fact that all cryptocurrencies are around a narrative. And yes, it's around a narrative, but the narrative is what is supporting the decisions that are made in the blockchain. Every single cryptocurrency is essentially just a set of software rules that developers have decided upon, and each different cryptocurrency, because it has a different set of rules, it creates a different economic environment. And so, this is the foundation that all cryptocurrency works on. And so anyone who kind of comes along and just does an arbitrary change to the blockchain, especially one that is really spoken about against the community, is really setting themselves up for a problem. It's one of the things that we criticize the other coins for, the fact that they can make these arbitrary unilateral decisions. It's one of the reasons why people pan Ethereum. Bitcoin's not meant to be something that you can do that with. And if you demonstrate to people that actually you can do that with it, you're suddenly undermining what a lot of people see as one of its strengths. So yeah, I think it's a big problem from a number of different directions. I think you're just fundamentally messing with what Bitcoin is supposed to be and changing it into something else. And it's not necessary. It's not necessary in order to improve the code, make it more efficient in terms of managing transactions. You're adapting it because it's something that's seen as nice to have. But we had a protocol that was working well enough. Sometimes perfect is the enemy of good. It was good enough, and if you tinker with it to try and make it even better, you're going to create all sorts of unknown effects that you can't actually fully predict the outcome of right now. I think it's a very dangerous thing to do. I'm really not impressed when I learned about it to hear about what was going on.
Well, I certainly don't think it's a conspiracy. I think they're just computer programmers seeing a limit and saying, hey, let's remove that. And it
Hmm.
seems like they might have stepped into a hornet's nest here. I do think there is some overreaction from the Knots community, especially this, I don't know him, but this Dennis Porter guy. He's raised more than 200K for core devs. My faith in their work is now broken, he says, echoing the BTC Pay server guy when he was upset at BitPay. So we're getting a little dramatic here. I've also heard that Luke Dash Jr. has banned Adam Back, which has stopped him from commenting on Luke's threads. So we are getting into a little bit of a blocking situation here where he could have just muted Adam Back and then he wouldn't have to see the messages. He doesn't have to block him, stopping him from talking. And it's also hard to be out there when you're saying you're against Adam Back, Peter Todd, and Jameson Lopp, who, while maybe not the most reasonable of people, are certainly some of the most intelligent people in Bitcoin. So I would like to hear more from them and perhaps more from these Knots guys. But in general, the idea that the Knots team should take over for the core team or that the Knots team is in any way equal to the core team is very difficult to believe and very hard to understand how they could even say that.
Yeah, I wouldn't advocate for that at all. I think Bitcoin Core are making a mistake, and they should at least hold back on making these changes until it's been discussed further. But yeah, I mean, I have total respect for developers who work on code and understand how it works. It's certainly not my area of expertise, and we need people who are good developers. But if people are speaking up loudly saying that they're unhappy about this, there needs to be a wider debate to push ahead in spite of all of that. I think is wrong. And at the very least, those changes should be halted until, there's been more decision about this, or a more viable alternative. Maybe if people feel that strongly about it, there needs to be a hard fork in this situation. You have Bitcoin where they increase the limit again, and Bitcoin as it was before. And that's the way you decide. That's what we did when it came to Bitcoin Cash. So, and sometimes that's the only way to resolve these arguments, especially with something as valuable and as important as Bitcoin now.
Well, the only thing I'd say is I'm not quite sure why they want to say, well, I wouldn't want a hard fork, and I don't want two camps, and I don't want the Knots guys running Bitcoin. Maybe instead of proposing a whole new system, they could say, hey, let's wait a year or wait 3 years. And they could signal that with the nodes, and it would just say, wait a year or study more. Something reasonable. I mean, it seems like Core might have gone too fast in this case, but I really don't agree with the other side and the way that they're behaving, and they're kind of like vandals and waving the flags and all this paranoia and stuff. They might not have the technical standing for what they're saying. And again, if it's all about this CP and this moral argument, I don't want to say it, but I'm pretty sure you can break a JPEG into text strings at 83 bytes, and you could put a bunch of 83-byte text strings, and you could pull them out of the blockchain. You could say, this is a CP image I reproduced from the blockchain. This has always been true.
Yeah, but it's still different, Thomas. Come on.
It's not, though. I mean, if
It
the
is.
problem
It
is the
is.
Bitcoin blockchain
It
generates
is.
CP, like I can make it generate CP now. I guess
Yeah,
if it
okay, so
generates
you could
too
post a
much
link,
CP,
but
it's like a number. It's like 1 is okay, 1,000's bad. I mean, and again, it's just I'm still a
yeah,
pirate.
but
I'm a
a link
pirate
could be
delivering money to
broken and
anybody in the world for any kind of cause, any kind of system, and I'm out here saying it's okay to be a money delivering pirate. Like, who am I to say you can't deliver data to somebody? This
no,
could,
it's a
now I
different
know they're
thing.
using the negative argument of CP, but this could be, whistleblower data. This could be exposing, crimes data. This could be exposing the Epstein list data. There's potential good uses for this as well, not to mention NFTs and all the things which I think it's actually designed for. It's actually designed to
But
get
there are
people to
plenty of
be.
other cryptocurrencies that could do that. It doesn't have to be on Bitcoin. It doesn't
They're
have to be on
also,
Bitcoin. And
Satoshi
you're
left.
fundamentally changing it from what it was that everyone else has bought into. So, if there are a number of people who are upset about this, you're changing something that they invested in good faith, and then changing the back end, after they've already bought it. And that's wrong. That's just wrong. So, yeah, I don't agree with you. I think data is a different thing to a neutral money transmitter. It is a different thing. And to change it without proper debate and too quickly and unilaterally, all of those things go against the principles of Bitcoin. So no, I don't think it's possible to. I don't agree that you can make those arguments.
Well, Satoshi left to work on other projects. Maybe he's back to timestamp data into the chain. Maybe it's all part of Satoshi's grander plan that we could never understand. But obviously, we're going to talk more about this in the future. It's not over by a long shot. Let us know in the comments or the chat what you think, if you're on Knots, if you're on Core, or if you're kind of thinking like I am, hey, let's just wait 6 months. Let's just wait a couple years. Let's just go a little slower. Let's not get out the pitchforks yet, although it is fun to get out the pitchforks and be all, oh, my faith in you is broken. Aww. But good luck with that. You're not going to make any friends, and we're not going to have any long-term relationships that way. But moving on to issue 2, Bitcoin faithful bet on Saylor's strategy being added to the S&P 500. MicroStrategy stock hasn't gone up like it used to, and now they're even using it to buy more Bitcoin. But that doesn't matter to Wall Street, who say they're going to add MicroStrategy to the S&P 500 today in just a few hours. Victoria Jones, what do you think about MicroStrategy being added to the S&P 500, perhaps even the Dow Jones Industrial Index, the 20 or so stocks that they use to kind of get a feeling for how the market's going? MicroStrategy, the company that does nothing but own Bitcoin, similar to the Pirate at 40 Ponzi scheme of so many years ago. It's just blowing it up in the stock market world, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, full credit to Michael Saylor. He saw an opportunity and he was in a position to make the most of it. Most of the average Bitcoiners who understood Bitcoin early just weren't in a position to do the same thing that Michael Saylor has. I mean, people wrote about it and talked about it. Michael Saylor did the research and he implemented it, and he has the rewards. It's amazing. But again, he has made his decisions based on uh, the faith and the narrative of what Bitcoin is, that many people believe in and understand. But again, if Bitcoin Core demonstrates that that can be fundamentally changed against strong public opinion, if that affects Bitcoin's reputation, it's not going to help Michael Saylor very much, because he's using Bitcoin within the existing fiat system, which is fragile. Bitcoin has the potential to break it. And while it's still strong and has the potential to, break it, Michael Saylor's onto a good thing. But if something happens that does damage the reputation of Bitcoin, the whole house of cards has the potential to fall. So it's a risky strategy. I mean, you might be able to be accepted into the S&P 500, but you can also lose that place as well. So, yeah, his strategy depends very much on the strength of Bitcoin. So, I really hope for all of our sakes that Bitcoin maintains its strength. And full credit to Michael Saylor for seeing that opportunity, but it, it might not work out if things change.
It has been a dramatic rise, but it could also be a dramatic fall. And
Hmm.
at some points, holders of the MicroStrategy stock were making even more money than people who held Bitcoin. I
Yeah.
don't think that's the way anymore. We've even seen MicroStrategy do strange things like they're selling merch now. So the guy who wants you to hold all the Bitcoin in the world says you should go ahead and give some of it up for a t-shirt. Don't worry about that. And additionally, it was still amazing to hear him speak at the Las Vegas conference, and to hear him basically say that you should do exactly what I'm doing. You should get totally leveraged. You should sell stock in your holdings. You should buy more holdings with the stock. You should sell more stock. You should leverage all these financial instruments. And at one point, it sounds really clever and really smart and really galaxy brain. And you're like, oh, this Saylor guy, he knows it all. I'm going to go set up this corporation in Wyoming or whatever he wants me to do, Montana. But then another point, it seems incredibly risky and incredibly easy for someone who's been rich for the last 20, 30 years and probably owns several properties and is tired of going to Hawaii, to say that you should take your meager income and run all these complicated financial schemes, which it's a little futuristic, but it's also a little risky and radical. He says you won't even need a financial advisor. You can just go to ChatGPT, which if you flip a coin and pretend you're not a Bitcoiner, and it's kind of like a crazy person telling you to do whatever the computer says, do a bunch of financial and legal things that you don't understand, and then just hope that it goes out fine and that everything works out fine. It's a lot to take. Well,
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes if they add them to the S&P. We're also going to go to the exit question to predict the price of Bitcoin back home. So that means I have the real Bitcoin predictor ball, so everyone can start comparing the averages of the replacement balls with the real one, which one predicts the best, so on and so forth. You're going to need complicated statistics for that. Victoria Jones, will it be higher or lower this time next week?
I don't know. I think, with all this debate going on, it could be lower. I think I am a bit worried about Bitcoin's reputation right now with all this going on.
Well, this is another make it or break it point for Bitcoin as the entire US economy continues to crater. The most recent jobs report, even though they fired the guy at the Bureau or the lady at the Bureau of Labor Statistics who gives them the report is still bad. We made 22,000 jobs. We're supposed to make 70,000 jobs. It's the third quarter in a row that we've failed that badly, and they've been revising the other quarters down. So it's one of those points again where maybe the US economy and the dollar and the whole world collapses, but Bitcoin is fine, and probably gold too. But it's one of those where gold has done this a dozen times, Bitcoin, not yet. So I
No.
come
And
in.
also, it's very leveraged now. That's the problem with, incorporating it with the existing financial system. I mean, the existing financial system is fundamentally unfair. That's why Bitcoin was invented, to try and undo that. So yeah, it's important that it's protected.
And it is true that we see it every time when the normal markets go down, people have to sell their other investments to cover their longs and their shorts to cover their positions. And they usually end up selling their Bitcoin. So it's not so
Mhm.
much a symbol that Bitcoin is bad. It's more of a symbol that somebody's other investments failed and they have to sell whatever it is, houses, Bitcoin, bonds, whatever it is. You have to pay if your shorts and longs fail. But here we go. I'm bullish. I'm sticking with it. What am I going to do? Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? And the ball says it's very bubbly, very hard to read. Need a new ball, I think. Let's see. You may rely on it. You may rely on it. The ball remains bullish no matter what. Doesn't matter.
Excellent.
Check out worldcryptonetwork.com. We've got lots of short videos and more at worldcryptonetwork.com. Moving on to issue 3. Sora Ventures launches Asia's first Bitcoin Treasury fund, plans to buy $1 billion in Bitcoin within 6 months. We continue to see this expansion of Bitcoin Treasury companies with MetaPlanet, Moon Incorporated, DV8, and BitPlanet Treasury initiatives also taking off across the Asian region. I guess I'll go to me on this one. Thomas Hunt, what do you think about Asia launching Bitcoin funds? I mean, it's the same thing. It's very exciting when anyone's using Bitcoin. We can't decide who it is, whether it's Eric Trump's MetaPlanet. Apparently, he's involved in the Japanese company MetaPlanet, or his new company we're going to talk about in a minute called American Bitcoin. It's just more people buying Bitcoin, more people using Bitcoin. And I don't know if we're live or not. We'll fix it later. We're recording anyway.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it's a huge thing. And it's also huge to see $1 billion, $1 billion from this company. Victoria, what do you think about Sora Ventures investing $1 billion into Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, they're just kind of following on the trajectory from everyone else, really. I mean, obviously, Michael Saylor has demonstrated how successful he can be with Bitcoin, so it's only a matter of time before Asia catches up. Obviously, the West invented the existing financial system, so they've taken their time to figure out how it all works, and many of them have learned how to play the game. So, yeah, not really surprising.
It does get bigger and bigger. Moving on to issue 4, kind of in the same vein. Trump family's American Bitcoin makes stock market debut. The Trump's latest foray into crypto is renewing ethics concerns amidst the president's push to deregulate the frontier industry. We've almost never seen anything like this before, where a president's sons are making billions of dollars off a brand new industry that the president is also deregulating. It's almost as if we were going into the Wild West and the president's sons owned the wagon wheel company, or they own the company that makes the shotguns. It is really quite a thing. Obviously, American Bitcoin has lost money already, lower than its opening price of $9.22. The company is set up to accumulate Bitcoin through computer mining of the cryptocurrency, as well as, quote, opportunistic Bitcoin purchases. The same was to be said about David Bailey's Nakamoto Corporation, which I've heard has done nothing but lost money and is a huge disaster for all those who invested. Nakamoto also said famously that they were going to attempt to time the Bitcoin market, starting and stopping, buying and selling based upon a formula, presumably. Victoria, what do you think about the Trump family and American Bitcoin, as well as all these other Bitcoin companies?
Yeah, I thought insider trading was meant to be illegal. So, I mean, you've got someone who's you've got a family who are intimately tied into what the plans are for the future, who are able to take advantage of it before anyone else. And also, they've obviously got the connections. This is the trouble with our existing financial system. There are certain things that you're just not allowed to invest in unless you've got the right connections. It's not a system that's equitable for everybody. And so you've got people like the Trump family and other elite people who were able to put these schemes together and take advantage of them. We look at these newspaper articles we look at these newspaper articles and we can't even begin to imagine what these sums of money look like. It's like it's a complete other world. It's like 5 billion could be 5,000 for all we know. It's just really difficult to conceptualize that level of money. And, that those are the kind of levels that they're able to play, with their connections and the advantages of knowing what's happening. I mean, this is the Cantillon effect, which is well known in economics. The closer you are to the issue of money, the better off you will be. And at the moment, the fiat system very much relies on our legal system and our laws, and the laws are made by the politicians. So yeah, they know which way the wind is blowing, and they're making the most of it, it would seem.
Well, I think we all know this is not what Bitcoin was made for, and this is not what it's all about. As they said at the Bitcoin convention here in Las Vegas, and they've said several times since, Trump's sons have publicly said that they've had trouble with their banking accounts, likely because of crime, allegedly. And that this is why they got into crypto, and how great crypto is because no one can stop them from doing allegedly crime, whatever they want, right? It's amazing. What a wonderful invention. This was not what it's for. This is not what it's about. This is not really a big success. And then to see them make their own companies where presumably you too could commit crime is again not what Bitcoin's all about, but it does show how the entrenched and existing system is reacting to Bitcoin. These are incredibly wealthy, incredibly powerful people, incredibly well connected, and they're now seeing that they can use and leverage those connections and that power to make money on Bitcoin. So this isn't the Wunder kid down the street or the computer scientist or the cypherpunk or even the libertarian who was an early investor in Bitcoin. These guys are late, they're behind, but they're coming in strong. I also saw a report on Twitter that Grant Cardone, who ironically I think made most of his money telling people to invest in real estate and how to do different things and flip houses and whatever and get real estate and get 10x your value. He's sold one of his mansions for $44 million, and he was only interested in accepting Bitcoin and is likely holding Bitcoin for that mansion now. A complete reversal of his real estate strategy. He hasn't unpublished any of his books. He hasn't taken down any of his seminars, but the rich are now acting like the early libertarians and the cypherpunks. They are trying to get as much Bitcoin as they can, and they're using all of their advanced levers and financial things and whatever. But it's the same as me and you emptying out our bank account and buying Bitcoin until we started getting overdraft fees and stuff like that. So, but we've
Yeah,
got
agreed.
more on the Trump family. Their World Liberty financial firm has made $5 billion, at least on paper. And that seems to be $5 billion that's going down every single day. World Liberty Financial is down 50% from its peak, so presumably they made $2.5 billion, still very good. And they're having lots of troubles and debates about what they should do with the fees and if they should burn them. But there's an even larger story rocking World Liberty Financial. The World Liberty Financial is accusing exchanges of token manipulation. At the same time, they have banned and blocked and controlled Justin Sun's wallet. They say that Justin Sun has $540 million worth of locked tokens, WLFI tokens that are now frozen, and allegedly $2.4 billion locked tokens, which are out of reach. He's estimated to have invested around $30 million into the tokens, making him the largest investor, currently worth about, I don't know, it's hard to say, at least $540 million, and plus the additional tokens. Justin Sun has posted a tweet begging the Trump family and begging the WLFI people to unblock and unblock his funds, allow him to send them. Victoria, what do you think about the World Liberty Financial and obviously the Justin Sun mess, which is currently developing story?
Well, in terms of the World Liberty Financial Token, I mean, it's nothing any of us who've been in Bitcoin for long enough have not seen before. I mean, most of the ICO tokens in 2017 did exactly that. They pumped initially and then they went down and then they went down and then they went down. And it's about the fact that, you're relying on an investment that's based on based hype and not a lot else. I mean, they've taken some of the lessons from the previous cryptocurrency frenzy and tried to replicate it on the back of Trump's interest in crypto. And the thing is, yes, you can do that with anything for a while. I mean, there are plenty of fads that come and go, but whether or not it's something that lasts and continues to grow all depends on what its fundamentals are. Bitcoin has excellent fundamentals. It certainly has up until now. Um, and that's what people have been buying into. That's what they've been prepared to invest in, the smart ones anyway. Yes, I mean, there's a really annoying ad that keeps coming up whenever I watch Rumble saying, Snot-nosed kids are not just flipping orange coins, they're making 10, 20x profits elsewhere. And, it sounds good, but the thing is, you are jumping on a fad, and the ad is completely misleading because while you can do that temporarily, long term, it turns out to be a really, really bad idea. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's the same lesson that we've been telling people about forever. You have to do your research. You really need to understand what it is that you're investing in, and also recognize that it's a new thing. If someone comes out of left field and decides to do something radical with it that other people don't approve of, you've got the potential of destroying this amazing thing that was about to take over the world, and suddenly it's not going to do that anymore. So yeah, I mean, the whole crypto industry is very new. There are still many lessons being learnt. Um, I think they're just trying to, some people did very well from the ICO craze in 2017, and maybe they're just trying to replicate it with the power and levers that they have, um, without recognizing that the reason why it was so successful in 2017 is that, people had had enough and they wanted something different. And for a while, they seemed to be quite successful. So,
Well, and there was real excitement behind those ICOs, real excitement behind the idea that this was a new way to make a company and that anyone with a good idea and some good programmers could get some funds and make a company. That's not these guys. These are the
yeah.
rich guys. They don't have any good ideas or good programmers. They're not coming in with any world shaking ideas. Oh, World Liberty Financial is going to be a blank, like a zero free crypto exchange, or it's going to be faster, or it's going to be, I don't know, more protected. These are not really selling points. They're not really new technologies. I mean, Coinbase is kind of getting a new technology. They say they're going to pack the Magnificent Seven stocks plus a Bitcoin ETF together into one fund so that your stocks could lose money and your Bitcoin could go up, and you could seem really clever, and you could pay Coinbase fees, of course. This is always about paying somebody fees at the end of the day. And I also think it's time for the media to take a step back and chill out. It's fun to say that Trump made $5 billion on this, right? Like, I like saying it. It's fun, $5 billion. But the reality is, if they tried to sell that $5 billion, there's not a market for it. The price would go down, 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 and they would get far less than $5 billion, just as we've seen there with the price going down 50%. They made $2.5 billion. Still great, still like over a bill, like nothing, we're not sad here. But again, if they tried to sell that 2.5 billion, the market wouldn't really support it. So they didn't really make that money. So it's fun to say that they have a market cap of $5 billion. And obviously that's impressive. Nobody's taken anything away from them on that, but they can't capitalize it. Maybe they could do some instrument and they could sell it, or they could sell a percentage of it, or have someone off the books that wants to take this. But it seems very unlikely that someone would want to take that, especially the size of the bet that you'd have to take, and that you'd be taking a huge bet on World Liberty Financial. You might end up like Justin Sun with your funds frozen just because you want to sell, which is
Well,
again,
hence why it's probably been frozen. Because if he did start to sell, it wouldn't be going down 20%, 50%, it'd be going down 80%. He's the biggest holder. So yeah.
and there's really no reason for them to hold back his funds other than, like you say, that it would cause a collapse in their system. So they have to protect their system, but there's no larger reason. And again, just I don't know what Justin Sun's up to. He bought that banana. He bought the crypto dinner. He got a tour of the White House. His company got their criminal charges against them dropped. They got the charges against him dropped. So we still have to say this is a big win. But even this guy can't leave, I'm going to estimate $100 million or what it may be on the table and just watch it die in this world liberty thing, which is pretty sure how everybody I know thinks it's going to go. Really, sad to watch all these normal people, but then this one rich guy. But what do you think, Victoria? He's got some of the rewards, but he can't just let the 100 million go.
I don't know. I think Justin Sun's probably rich enough to let 100 million go. Um, but if he really had to, but isn't it ironic that it's not a genuine thing? I mean, no one in Bitcoin was ever able to do that. Freeze. I mean, unless one of the exchanges was hacked and then no one had access to it again. Um, but to freeze someone's funds for you know, no obvious reason other than you just don't want them to sell in order to tank the price. It's just so blatant, isn't it, really?
It's
Yeah.
also nice to see we get an answer to how much money would break up this political relationship between Justin Sun and Trump, and it turns out $100 million. That was how much. Like he was fine with other losses and Trump coin and all these other things, whatever. But it was this 100 million that really drove him down. So,
Mm.
all right, well, we're out of issues for today, so let's move on to prediction or story of the week. Victoria Jones, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week?
I don't have anything on the top of my tongue. I mean, I've been away all summer, which has been very nice. It's been a very nice break. So, yeah, getting back on top of my website and the courses that we're releasing, step by step, we've been trying to teach people about running a node and helping newbies kind of get into Bitcoin. So, if you're interested in that, you can find my website, satoshispage.com. Um, yeah, I think the most recent video that I released was, series of videos is on exchanging Bitcoin. So teaching people who are new to it, how to buy and sell. Probably not necessarily appropriate for this audience because they probably know how to do that already. But for people who don't know, it's just a way of taking them step by step through that.
Very cool. And people can check it out at satoshispage.com. I don't have much to say this week either. I got back from Burning Man, still a little tired and something in my throat going on. But we made it to the show. I don't think I've been at this desk for a while. The calendar says June 11th. But just want everyone to check out BitFest at bitfest.uk. It's the 21st through 23rd in November in Manchester, UK. They're going to have a Noster conference, a Pepe conference, and a Bitcoin conference. This is not a big corporate event, so there's still a chance to get some early bird, cheap tickets, stuff like that. Support BitFest and check it out at bitfest.uk. And that's about it for this week. Victoria, anything else going on?
No, I just mentioned I'm going to be speaking at BitFest, so I'll be there if anyone wants to meet me in person.
Very cool. I'm hoping to be there as well. It is tough though. It is so cold and so close to Thanksgiving, but I'll just get the travel plan
Yeah.
and we'll see how it goes. But
Oh, yeah, that is a challenging date.
it's
Someone
very
needs to sort that out.
it's a tough one because at first I was like the 21st. Now I'm like, oh, the 23rd, and then we're getting closer, the 24th, the 25th, and pretty soon you're right on the 28th of Thanksgiving. But we'll see. We'll figure it out. Not that much happening. Good to cover all this exciting Trump stuff. Get back on the news. Looks like we're on one of the YouTubes, but not the other. So I'll fix that later. But anyone that's commenting on the wrong one, just check out the other one. But be sure to give us a comment, say hello in the chat down below. Until next time,
Bye
bye
bye.
bye.